The idea is to really discover something of this quality of what we call Holy Week. And it's not an easy task. It's not actually so obvious, which I think is also very much signature of our times. On one hand, we have this mystery of Christmas. And when we look back from today, we look back on December, end of December, we look at Advent. And when you try to recognize and remember the mood of Advent and of Christmas particularly, then one can even say that this is something that is happening naturally, still. Christmas today in America, in the West, regardless of if you're Christian or not, regardless if you're atheist or whoever you are in your spiritual life or lack thereof, you're somehow aware of the mood of Christmas. The gifts, the Santas, the decorations out in the streets. So when we ask why is it so obvious, we have to, of course, look at ourselves as human beings. And the mystery of Christmas is something as natural as the fact that we too naturally come to the world. Birth is still something that is happening naturally. So what I mean by that, it actually is taking place and it's happening out of the grace of God. You conceive, you deliver. Obviously, it's maybe not as simple as I say it. There's a whole process to that leads to it. But when you think about it from the higher point of view, there's not much that we have to do actually under regular, healthy conditions that the baby comes to the world. Now, on the other side of the spectrum of life is what? Death. And here too, in a certain sense, death is something that still we, human beings, still share with the divine world. Share, you know what I mean by this? Aside of the extreme cases, for instance, of suicide or planned suicide, death is something that is still in great part belonging to the sphere of gods, the sphere of destiny, you can say. You know, in biblical terms, the hour, the Father knows the hour. It is, we don't know still to a large degree when will our lives be fulfilled. When is it scheduled for us to cross the threshold? And in between these two epistles of life, the birth and death, is this mystery of Christ, with its most profound and most difficult element, the mystery of death and resurrection. Often Christians forget. It's difficult for us to reach our consciousness to the level that we actually grasp this, that the source of our faith, the source of our religious life is a super sensible event, resurrection. It's something that, in other words, is contrary to all the laws that we know define the life and cycles of nature. So it's actually a great paradox that we have a feeling we're drawn to this midpoint of mystery of life, but it is actually, unlike birth, Christmas, and death, it's not a natural event. What does it mean? That we can't really grasp it with senses and with brains that are wired and conditioned to live and operate within the natural world. in order to be able to grasp something of this mystery of the risen Christ, of resurrection, we have to go above the condition of nature. And in that regard, Holy Week served, Holy Week together with Lent, with Passion Time, was kind of a platform, a period upon which people would be able to quicken, to wake something up in themselves in order to be able to come closer to the mystery of Easter. When we look at the central point of the mystery of Easter, the resurrection, then of course it all has to do with the body of the risen Christ. Descriptions, pictures, beginning with the Sunday of Resurrection and the 40 days of Christ's dwelling with his students, with the disciples, with that other human beings, he actually appears to them in a physical body, in body. It's a strange type of body because all of a sudden people can be in a closed off room, no windows, the doors is closed, and yet he appears, he speaks to them, he asks them if they have something to eat, he eats with them, he even allows Thomas to touch his wounds, and all of a sudden he disappears again. So you see, with Easter, with resurrection, we also have to do not only with the religious fact, with the religious element of your faith or religious imagination, but if we take it seriously, we actually have to do with evolutionary fact. Evolutionary fact, meaning something has happened to a body of the chosen one, the Messiah, the anointed one, that change this body, this vessel, the temple in which we live forever, and change it such that this body, the Christ's body, is able to, in a certain sense, override, overcome, become independent of the laws of nature. And in order to be able to grasp the meaning of Christianity today, we have to go as far as to say what we're doing here is a step, is a next necessary cultural evolutionary step that brings about realization of how and what human body will be in the future, far future, evolutionary future, through the deed of Golgotha, through Christ's incarnating in Jesus of Nazareth. It is so radical. And today we wanted to look a little bit at the history of how this process, grand process, has begun from the point of view of the Bible. And those few quotes that I have here, if you don't have them now, I have them here for you. They pertain to selected 3 stages of this process in which from the heights and depths of the spiritual world, you can say from the cosmos, spiritual, physical cosmos, gradually, through aeons of spiritual evolution of human being, first from the heavens, we should say, then through different planetary stages. We use it in context of anthroposophy, so we don't mean planets as they are today, but preceding conditions of the earth. Gradually, from the spirit, the world of substance, with its most representational element, the human body, had actually kind of contracted from peripheries, from far out, from far depth in time, even actually across the boundaries of time, over the aeons and aeons of processes, cosmological processes, slowly the world in which we live kind of extracted. Imagine the extract. You have a glass in which you stir warm water, you put a lot of salt there and you stir it, and then the water is kind of cloudy, but you don't really see that salt. Now, if you allowed that water to evaporate in the course of day, and if you would, for instance, hang little threads of thread into that water, when water evaporates, around the thread there will be beautiful little crystals of salt. They will also be on the glass, on the surface of the glass. This is what I imagine. From far away and depth in time, the world of matter, the world of substances have crystallized with its most representative element, the human body. The Bible begins with the 7 days of creation. Those 7 days of creation are stages and steps in which these cosmic powerful processes gradually took form, took shape, form our world. It's different than our friends, evangelical Christians, when they believe in creationism. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually evolutionary processes that are described in the Bible, the world of pictures, symbols as if. So we don't take them literally as days of creation, but we see epochs, mighty epochs in which the world that we have today was planted as if. Not yet, it wasn't the way it is today, but it was only in the forms of 7 seeds. The first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, seventh day of repose. Seeds. What we have today is actually already third generation after these seeds. And yet, this is something so fundamental, those 7 days of creation, to the life and the cycles of Earth and our own existence, that they were, through the wisdom of God, imprinted in the way we measure time, week to week. There is no 8 days, there is no 3 days in a week, there is 7 days exactly. This is an archetype. Right? So in other words, out of the instinct, out of this memory, primal memory of these events, human beings instinctively decided without any negotiations. Of course, there is 7 days in a week. This is where our social life will weave through, just like the deeds of the Elohim, of the creative spirits of form, wove through 7 great epochs, days, capital DAYS, of creation. They pour their energy into these 7 days, just like we pour our energy into what? Into creating this future body of Christ, the social body. Today, we are individuals, but this is a transitory state of conditions of the humankind. When God created Adam, the first man, Adam in the Hebrew language is not a given name the way it is today. Adam in Hebrew means of earth. And in all biblical dictionaries, Adams actually translates to man, to mankind. It's one, every one of us is a human being, but we are also all the human being. We belong to a spiritual species of humanity. That's Adam. In the biblical language, in the symbolic language of the Bible, of course, we see it as an individual, the story of this primordial being that becomes separated in two. man and woman. But the original human being, remember, is something that happens still before what we call the fall. The conception of the human being on the sixth day of creation takes place in the spiritual world, not on earth, the way we know it, because earth as we know it is already infected by Luciferic intervention that we call the fall. It happens above the world of senses, in the paradisal ethereal spheres. There, human being is conceived by the Elohim, by the creative spirits of form. Perfect creation. Being of such power that gods themselves are proud to have created something like that. A being that is able, unlike perhaps even all hierarchies, to give the right names to right phenomena. He is the power of the word, the namer of things. The form is so beautiful that gods themselves look at it with awe. This is, of course, just a black and white reproduction of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. And we can have questions as to what exactly are we looking here at. I would like you to look at it later on. Michelangelo is not really showing the muscles of a certain male specimen, but the harmony imprinted, harmony reflected, divine harmony, spiritual harmony reflected in the form of Adam's body. It's not actually what exactly do we see, but the beauty of it is in relationships, in the golden mean of the painting and the fresco. And you see that relationship, for instance, here, where Adam is exact mirror image of the creative forces of the heavens. So not only is it the spiritual power of naming, but also it has particular spiritual form. Spiritual form, it's almost like oxymoron again, because form is something that is solid, has shape, has contours. Spirit is something ephemeral. And yet Adam has a form, which is a perfect creation of the spiritual world. This form, together with the fall, crashes, so to speak. Just imagine a stone under the waterfall onto which the water crashes and splashes droplets of water. This is what with the fall happens with that beauty and divinity, goodness of the form of the original human being, and it crashes, and so through these particles of water, matter comes into being. Material world gradually comes into being. This original crash, of course, means also the original separation within us, the human beings. What was one in the spiritual world, Adam, humanity, becomes out of necessity separated into two concurrent streams. And we call these streams man and woman. Sanctity of this division is at the root of human evolution. Until quite recently, very recently, last 30, 40 years, it was obvious that in order to provide the form for the incarnating soul, a cooperation between specimens of these two concurrent streams is necessary. We call it love. Sensual, ideal partnership doesn't matter. It's only quite recently, and perhaps towards the end of the week we'll get to that, what are the reasons that those things become today, we're told, irrelevant. But if sanctity of man and woman becomes irrelevant and procreation is independent from the human being de facto, we no longer have a purpose to be at all in this world, in any world, in fact. We have never had such dangerous times as we have today. And it's all about the human form. Aeons had passed. Then Yahweh, one of the creative spirits of form, said, "See, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." Therefore, Yahweh, the Elohim, one of the creative spirits of form, sent Adam forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the first man. And at the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed the cherubim with a sword of flame so that he may guard the way to the mysteries of the tree of life. Beautiful fairy tale. We all know it somehow because we all remember it somehow. Deep in our core, epigenetic memory has this imprinted. From this anthroposophical point of view, this moment described here is something that took place in what Rudolf Steiner called the Lemurian epoch. We have to imagine completely different conditions of physics and chemistry and state of matter. And yet human being was, of course, always there, is already there. And just like Lemuria fell, so to speak, to the fires, volcanic, tectonic powers of Earth, so gods appoint the cherubim with the fiery sword. The destruction by fire. This is something that today external scientists are contemplating, and they're trying to pinpoint when this had happened. Different imagination there. They speak about imaginations of these antediluvian dragons and beasts, dinosaurs, bones of which we find massively, but there is nothing else. There is no context. So the idea is that the great meteorite fell and changed the conditions of the world. In reality, it was reversed. It's the part of the organism of the earth that was expulsed, that was pushed away, and today what we see as the satellite of earth, which we call moon, was first birthed out of the earth. This is the time which, imagine what crisis, what tensions in the world, natural world must have happened if such event would to take place. Everything was turned into fire, into dust, except for the small colony of humanity which was protected and which was sent forth to cultivate, to till the ground in the new conditions. People had very different bodies as we do have today, of course, and yet they were already engaged in transforming this world somehow. The echoes of this we still see in the cultures of very basic, ancient, primitive cultures, on a soul level, not so much on the physical body level. The new conditions are created. This is something we call in anthroposophy Atlantis, the legendary world that, again, completely different chemistry, physics, conditions. The world is not as yet organized as ours today, with gravity, for instance, with levity, with east, west, and so on, with up and down. Everything is in a state of external chaos. Rudolf Steiner speaks about extreme types of kind of spiritual weather. Today, the great cyclones in the Atlantic are the far remnant of these conditions that were holding sway in Atlantis, where human beings, we must imagine, had a very, very different body than our bodies. And yet culture is cultivated. When you look at the stories from about the time of Cain and Abel in the Bible, all the way to Noah, this is all descriptions, memories, epigenetic memories of the conditions that we call the Atlantean conditions. You have to imagine that human being got into relationship, humanity got into relationship with the world of substances around us more and more. We were sinking into these waters of Atlantis more and more. And out of the original colony, out of the original form that fell with Adam, different branches and different versions started evolving. You see it all in these descriptions of the descendants of Enoch, for instance, all these genealogies of the Bible. So, but it's all about actually looking and seeking for the right form in which this original impulse, the Christ impulse, actually can go forth through times and different conditions of the universe. So there's fantastic descriptions for us sometimes when Rudolf Steiner describes capacities and forms of beings of Atlantis. When you read the Genesis, you see, for instance, the giants are existing there next to colonies of human beings. There are small forms, middle forms, big forms, like in the fairy tales. What Tolkien was describing with all different species of beings, elves, human beings, dwarves, orcs. This is all the memory of Atlantis. At some point, it creates such chaos, and human beings learn through initiation into world of elements. They discover something that we must only today call magic, magical forces. It's not so strange to think about it, because when you actually would think from a higher point of view about the science that we have today, it is nothing else but magic. Imagine having knowledge of substances of the human being that are cosmic substances. Remember, we're created out of the powers of the Elohim. But we have grasped recently how to manipulate hormones in such a way that within 1 year of me taking certain substance, I can look like a beautiful woman. What would you say? If your priest all of a sudden looks like a very attractive woman. It is today a quality of science. We can do this. But from the certain point of view, this is nothing else but magic. And manipulations and knowledge gained through initiation in the great 7 oracles of Atlantis, especially in some part of them, generated such energy, etheric growth forces, that the world started collapsing under the Atlanteans. Before this came to be, this is the fragment Genesis 6 here. God called this Noah to step out of the crowds, separate himself, and build the ark. Now, what you see here is from the frescoes in the catacombs. And Noah is a very popular motif in the original Christian paintings. But what do you see here? Can you tell me what do you see? Just simply.
Releasing the dove.
Okay, and where is he?
Ark.
Okay, but how does this ark look? Yeah. So casket, it literally is something that reassembles what we today call a casket. So think about all these imaginations that people have today, beginning of the 20th century and today, the building of this enormous ship, where all the giraffes and elephants and dogs and pigs were invited, except for the poor dragons, dinosaurs and such. This is fairly modern representation. The original Christians, when they thought the ark, they in fact were using the same word that is that is used for the ark as well for the basket in which baby Moses was placed and led down the river Teba is both. It's the ark of Noah, is also actually the ceremonial basket / even casket. It's the cradle, and cradle in some languages has meaning of both, because we come from God in a cradle and we go back to God in cradle of a casket. That was the ancient imagination. So think about it. All these descriptions, biblical descriptions, have nothing to do with some fantasies that a human being, with big beard and a big staff built. There was no technology to build anything as yet. There was no nails and hammers, because the world looked simply very different. The forms of animals were not there yet. So what Noah, known in different cultures as Manu of the Hindus, also in Greek mythology, actually every mythology has an element of Noah there, the founder of the post-Atlantean epoch, was an initiate who was able to take the spiritual, physical chaos of the external Atlantean conditions and synthesize it, bring it into the new form. And he's done it beginning with himself as the initiate, kind of a type of a priest, by fitting all these living energy of Atlantis into the form of the modern human being. What was outside, as for instance, the streams of animals, as souls of plant spirits, became in Noah incarnated. Of course, again, something that took aeons, we can imagine. It's a very different time experience too. It wasn't necessarily Sunday through Saturday. And when you look at the descriptions following Genesis 6, for instance, the rhythms of the year, the rhythms of the stars, the agricultural rhythms only begin after the flood. The great symbol and the picture of this new covenant, the covenant with Noah, is the rainbow. And what is the rainbow? Imagine human being before Noah had never prior to that, through aeons of evolution, seen anything so amazing as a rainbow, because our sense constitution, the human body, was constituted in a different way. We became objective from this moment, began to become objective. Me and the world. This is the beginning of what Rudolf Steiner calls post-Atlantean epoch of evolution, which is de facto the beginning of culture and history that we know today, about 12, 13, 15,000 years ago. So according to the external science, the last ice period. This new world emerged out of these remnants of Atlantis that were presented to human beings in the form of ice caps. New human form. I'm saying all this, and this will be conclusion for today, to wake in us an experience, sensation, intuition, that the way we are today, that the way you live with yourself today, all the way to limbs and pulse of your heart and smell that is unique to you, and all these experiences that I am this living being that extends from my head, I can see myself, this is temporary. This hasn't been like that. Actually, it is quite young still, but it doesn't have a long future either. It's only through materialism of our times that we are so convinced that nobody even asks the question or questions that. We just take it for granted. But these bodies were not like this, and they won't be like that. And you know where is the proof of that you all can experience? in your own biography. Remember when you were 3, 4 years old, how flexible your body was when you were able to climb the trees, and you would scrape your knees and mama would just kiss and blow on it and it would heal in 24 hours. Try to do it today at the older age. You would have to have a squadron of surgeons to to give you a little treatment on that. So within the period of our lives, let's say average 70 to 80 years, we actually repeat those conditions. As children, straight born from heaven, we're still in the Moria. We're divine. Remember when you saw a baby, your own baby, or baby in your family when they were born? People come with, oh, because we see God's creation. You don't even know, can I touch him? You don't even know if you can touch him. You touch it and you feel healed right away. Then when they become, at the age of 7 or so, warriors or princesses, they play these roles. They're back in Atlantis. The giants, the dragons, the heroes. All this is children play out imagination in their bodies too. They're not anymore babies. They're very physical. They're so amazing physical and healthy, so to speak. But they're not yet human beings with their, for instance, divided sexual functions. They're not yet on earth the way Noah, and with him, of course, all the predecessors, starting with Adam and Eve, were with the end of the flood. So you can see that succession. Adam, in a way, if we would use this Eastern law of the repeated earthly life, it's almost as if Adam is reincarnated in Noah under completely new conditions. And then comes the Christ, the third great step. And this is the step that we today are trying to contemplate, especially in the weeks of the days of the Holy Week. We're trying to contemplate and see how much has changed in humanity within last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. I mean, it's incredible. And yet we still measure those changes from AD, from the birth of Christ. Whoever is trying to erase those mysteries did not manage to erase the mystery that we have a completely new world with the incarnation, death, and resurrection of Christ. And actually, probably never before was this world and will be this world so dynamic and so subject to changes. Today, they're clearly apocalyptic changes since that event of Golgotha. This will only accelerate. And just like with Noah, we have received this world of forms, directions, relationships, weight, measure. Through Christ's incarnation and resurrection, slowly these inherited forms are dissolving more and more. So we have to be prepared not only for something that will grow out of us as a new human form, but actually we have to be prepared that we will have very soon very, very unstable condition, because the whole world starts moving again into the more or less stage of chaos. That stability that Noah brought, that form and perfection and relationship, was necessary not for us, but for the Christ to incarnate. So we already feel the symptoms of that in nervousness, in chaos that starts and creeping all the way to the streets of our cities, all the way to our families, all the way even to the world of sciences. And there are already discrepancies between what people calculate, our dear scientists, and actual events, for instance, in the starry world. People can't understand that. The great first breakthrough of that was, of course, in the 20s, the discovery of the quantum physics. That the world, with the discovery of the quantum physics, the stability of the Newtonian worldview crushed. Under the world of senses, there's world of chaos, and of course, with people like Robert Oppenheimer, we have invited this chaos all the way to the surface of our daily existence, for instance, through discovery of nuclear energy. So all this will progressively lead to a very different conditions of the world, which means that our bodies will have to be assume very different conditions. And just the point of this, all this, take this seriously. Every time you take this piece of bread from the altar in you, every time you sip from this cup, this new body, the new form that was planted in this world of senses with the mystery of Golgotha through Jesus Christ starts sprouting in you already. Gradually, it is growing in us a different body. And this new body, for the first time, revealed itself in the moment and in the event that we call the Pentecost, the original Pentecost. Something of which St. Paul so beautifully speaks, that there is body with many members. The new body, the Christ's body, the risen's body is no longer mine or yours individual body. The new Adam will be a type of cooperation, type of relationship, type of dynamics between the individuals that nevertheless will not be abstract but real. A communion between individual human beings that will actually create the chalice for the next stages of our development. And just even in the primitive Aramaic imagination, when they speak about being in a kind of a type of Ark of Noah, that some of us will end up in a spaceship. That spaceship is nothing else but Christ's body of resurrection that inwardly from within is sprouting in those who are committed to him, who take in their life, in their thinking, all the way to their physical bodies, his body and his blood.